My parents called me a failure when I moved out at 18. "You'll be back in a month," they laughed. I stayed silent. A year later they begged me to come home when I closed the door behind me that night, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and the last shred of my pride. The cold air felt like freedom. "You'll be back in a month," my father had jeered, waving me off like I was some joke he was tired of laughing at. My mother had just smirked, arms folded tight across her chest, as if daring me to try and prove them wrong. I didn't say a word. I just stared at them, two strangers who happened to share my blood, and left without looking back. 18 years old. No money to speak of. No real plan. Just a silent vow buried so deep inside me it felt like it was stitched into my ribs. I will never come back. You could say the signs were always there. The way my mother's smile would vanish the moment I opened my mouth. The way my father's patience ran dry before I even finished a sentence. Growing up, it was like living in a minefield. Any step could trigger the next explosion. But the first real hint that I was more burden than son? That came a few months before my birthday. It was late October when I first overheard them. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not exactly. I had come home early from my shift at the grocery store, dog-tired and still smelling like stale bread and cleaning supplies. I wasn't even planning to go inside right away. I just sat in the driveway, engine off, window cracked open, trying to gather enough strength to face them. That's when I heard it, their voices, slipping through the kitchen window. "He's a waste of time," my father said, in that dismissive tone he reserved for people he didn't think were worth the air they breathed. "Still working that minimum wage job like it's some big accomplishment," my mother added with a sneer. "Pathetic." I froze, hands still on the ignition key. "You watch," my father continued. "He'll be back here begging before his first rent check's due. Crying like a little boy. And we'll let him squirm," my mother said. "Teach him what real failure feels like." They laughed together, sharp, humorless sounds that seemed to slice through the night. I sat there in the darkness, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not because their words surprised me, but because they didn't. A part of me had always known. Still, hearing it out loud, like a verdict being read in court, cracked something deep inside me. I didn't go inside right away. Instead, I sat there until the car grew cold, staring at the faint glow of the kitchen window, their laughter still ringing in my ears. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't just going to move out. I was going to disappear from their lives, not with bitterness, not with anger, but with quiet, unshakable finality. I was done trying to earn what was never going to be given. The night I told them I was leaving, the house was already heavy with tension. You could always feel it, like a thunderstorm that never quite broke, a low, suffocating pressure pressing down on you, whispering that something was always about to go wrong. I had rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times in my head. Simple. Direct. No room for them to twist it around or make it about how I was betraying them. But the second I stepped into the living room, where they sat half watching some mindless TV show, the words stuck in my throat. It wasn't fear that made me hesitate. It was the sick, stubborn part of me that still wished, even after everything, that they might react differently. That maybe, just maybe, they'd show a flicker of concern, or pride, or even basic human sadness. Wishful thinking. I stood there for a moment, gripping the strap of my worn-out backpack, then finally said it. "I'm moving out. Tomorrow." At first, they didn't even look up. Then my father chuckled, a dry, bitter sound. "Moving out?" he said, stretching lazily. "With what money? You think that pathetic paycheck of yours is going to keep you alive for a month?" My mother shook her head and smiled, that smile she reserved for when she thought I was being naive. "You'll be back," she said. "Crawling, begging. Mark my words." They laughed then, not nervously, not uncomfortably, but hard, cruel laughter that echoed off the cheap paneling on the walls. It should have made me angry. Instead, it made me colder. Sharper. It solidified the decision that had, until that moment, been fragile. I didn't argue. I didn't shout or defend myself. I just stood there and let their words wash over me like dirty water. And in the silence between their laughs, I made another promise to myself. No matter what happens, I will never give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall. I turned on my heel and walked back to my room, shutting the door behind me for the last time. That night I barely slept. I stuffed what little I owned into a battered duffel bag, some clothes, my old laptop, a stack of notebooks filled with dreams I hadn't dared to say out loud. Everything else, trophies from sports I didn't love, school awards they barely noticed, I left behind. Let them keep the empty shells. I was taking the only thing that mattered, my future. At dawn, I slipped out quietly. No goodbyes. No second chances. The sun was just beginning to rise, the streets washed in pale blue light as I stepped into the uncertain day ahead. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was walking towards something, even if I didn't know what it was yet. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks or cheering crowds. It felt like a quiet breath I didn't know I'd been holding my whole life. I rented a room the size of a closet above a failing laundromat. The walls were so thin I could hear every whir of the old machines below, every argument in the hallway. The mattress on the floor sagged in the middle, the heat barely worked, and the only window overlooked a brick wall, but it was mine. All mine. Rent was cheap, which was good, because the grocery store paycheck was a joke. Most weeks, after paying for rent, bus fare, and a little food, I had maybe $15 to my name. Some nights, dinner was a packet of instant noodles split in half to make it last 2 days. I didn't go out. I didn't see friends. I didn't even tell most people where I lived. I didn't want their pity. Loneliness clung to me like a second skin. I'd come home to silence so thick it felt like another person in the room. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if my parents were laughing somewhere, smug in their prediction that I would fail. But every time that doubt crept in, I remembered their faces the night I left. How small and mean they had looked. How certain they were that I couldn't survive without them. That certainty fueled me. I worked every shift I could get my hands on. Stocking shelves overnight. Bagging groceries until my hands went numb. I took odd jobs on weekends, cleaning gutters, assembling furniture, anything anyone would pay for. I was exhausted every second of every day, but strangely it was the first time in my life I felt alive. One night, while cleaning up the back room after a double shift, I found an old book someone had left behind, Learn Coding in 30 Days. I almost threw it out. But something made me slip it into my backpack instead. Later, sitting on the mattress with the city buzzing outside my window, I opened it. The words didn't make much sense at first, lines of code and commands that looked like a foreign language, but it was a distraction from the gnawing hunger, from the aching loneliness. And slowly, stubbornly, I began to teach myself. I spent every free second I had on that battered old laptop, watching tutorials, taking free online classes, building ugly little websites no one would ever see. At first, it was frustrating. More nights than I could count ended with me slamming the laptop shut in pure, helpless anger. But I kept going. Because giving up meant proving them right. And I would burn before I let that happen. Spring came, eventually. The days grew longer, the cold faded, but the grind never stopped. If anything, I pushed harder. I didn't know it yet, but that stubbornness, that refusal to break, was about to change everything. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how the biggest moments sneak up on you when you least expect them. I had been applying for every freelance coding job I could find, anything that even smelled like a paycheck. Most days, I didn't even get a response. Other days, the rejections came fast and merciless. We're looking for someone with more experience. Your portfolio isn't strong enough. We've decided to go in a different direction. I kept a folder of all the rejection emails. I read through them sometimes, like a twisted little ritual, a reminder of how badly the world didn't want me. But that Tuesday, when I opened my inbox before heading to my grocery store shift, there was something different. An email with the subject line, "You're hired." At first I thought it was spam. Some phishing scam. But when I clicked it open, there it was. A small web design company needed someone to build a basic landing page for a local business. Simple project. $300. Due by the end of the week. It wasn't a fortune. It wasn't life-changing. But it was mine. I remember sitting there, stunned, the cursor blinking on the screen like it was daring me to believe it was real. $300. That was more than a week's paycheck at the store. That was groceries. That was rent. That was a tiny crack of light through a wall I'd been punching for months. I worked like a man possessed. Every spare second, every moment not spent at work, was poured into that project. When I finally sent it off, terrified I'd done something wrong, sure they'd find a reason not to pay me, I sat by my email like a kid waiting for Christmas morning. 2 hours later, the payment landed in my account. $300. Real money. Real proof that I wasn't crazy for believing I could build something better. I stood in the middle of my tiny room and laughed out loud, not a bitter, sarcastic laugh like the ones my parents used to throw at me. A real one. A laugh that tasted like oxygen after holding your breath for too long. That night, for the first time in months, I treated myself to something stupid, a greasy, overpriced cheeseburger from the diner across the street. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. But sitting there by the window, the city lights smeared across the glass, that burger tasted like victory. Small? Maybe. But it was the first crack in the dam. The first sign that I could make it. Really make it, without their help, without their approval, without anything but my own 2 hands. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to live. The first job led to a second. Then another. One client liked my work so much they referred me to a friend. That friend referred me to another. By the end of the summer, I wasn't just scraping by anymore. I was standing on my own 2 feet. I quit the grocery store job without a second thought. Walked in, handed them my apron, and walked out into the sunlight feeling like I just stepped into someone else's life. Someone stronger. Someone free. I upgraded my living situation, nothing fancy, but a real studio apartment. 4 walls, a bathroom that didn't leak, a small kitchen I could actually cook in. I bought a second-hand car that rattled a little but ran just fine. For the first time, I had savings. A future. Every tiny success built into something bigger. I started studying business strategy late at night, taking free courses online about contracts, client management, marketing myself. I wasn't just building websites anymore. I was building a life. And while my world grew, theirs shrank. At first, I didn't hear anything about them. It was like they had erased me, or maybe I had erased them. But small towns are full of cracks, and news has a way of leaking through. It started with whispers. That my father had lost his job. That the business he bragged about at every family barbecue had finally gone under. Then came my mother's health. Nothing serious at first, but her endless need to control everything turned on her when stress set in. Hospital visits. Medication. Bills stacking up like unpaid debts of character. They had spent their whole lives tearing others down, and now, when they needed support, there was no one left willing to catch them. Funny how that works. I wasn't surprised. Not really. They had built their castle on sand, on pride, on cruelty, on treating people like they were disposable. And now? Now they were drowning in the ruins of their own making. One evening, about a year after I'd walked out that door, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, some old scar, made me pick it up. "Hello?" I said cautiously. There was a long pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a year, thin, tired, trying too hard to sound casual. It was my mother. "Hey, it's been a while, huh?" she said, with a forced little laugh. I didn't say anything. I just waited. After a moment, she sighed, not the dramatic kind she used to weaponize, but something raw, something broken. "Listen," she said. "We've had a rough year. Your dad's been sick. Money's tight. We could really use a little help." There it was. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just a reaching hand, expecting the same blind loyalty they had spent years stomping on. I almost hung up right then and there. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the scared kid trying to win their love. I was the man who had survived without them. And they were the ones who couldn't survive without me. I let the silence stretch between us until it grew uncomfortable. Until she started shifting, fidgeting like a school kid caught in a lie. Finally I spoke. Calm. Steady. Every word shaped by years of swallowing everything I should have said. Funny, I said, my voice almost conversational. I thought I was a failure. She went quiet. I thought, I continued, I'd be crawling back in a month, remember? That's what you said, isn't it? Still, she said nothing. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. The anger had burned away long ago, leaving something colder. Cleaner. Truth. You laughed at me, I said. You told me I'd never make it. You made sure I left with nothing but a bag of clothes and a head full of doubt. I could hear her breathing on the other end, shallow and shaky. And now, I said, after everything, you want me to save you. She finally spoke, her voice cracking. We were wrong, okay? We made mistakes. But we're still family. Family. The word hit me like a slap. As if the word alone was supposed to erase everything they'd done. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You don't get to pull the family card now, I said, my voice still calm. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. Family doesn't laugh at your struggles. Family doesn't kick you when you're already down. There was a whimper, maybe a soft sob, but I didn't flinch. I didn't soften. You didn't raise me to be strong, I said. You forged me in your fire, in your cruelty, in your endless need to tear me down. Everything I have now, every success, every step forward, I built because I refused to be like you. Another long pause. Please, she whispered. We need you. I closed my eyes. For a long time, the little boy inside me had wanted to hear those words. But not like this. Not hollow. Not poisoned by convenience. I needed you once too, I said. And you laughed. I pulled the phone from my ear, stared at it for a moment, and then, with a final, quiet certainty, I hung up. And this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. Not moving. Just breathing. The city outside my window kept humming along, cars in the distance, neighbors arguing somewhere down the hall, a stray dog barking at nothing. Life, uncaring and unstoppable, rolled forward without hesitation. And I realized, so could I. There was no going back now. No last-minute apologies that would magically stitch the broken pieces together. No redemption arc waiting just beyond the next phone call. I opened my messages and blocked the number. Then I went into my email and did the same with the ones they had sent, desperate, manipulative, guilt-ridden pleas, all gone with a few clicks. I even pulled out an old box from under my bed, one I hadn't touched since the day I moved out. Inside were a few faded photos, a crumpled birthday card with a forced "Love you" scribbled on it, and a handful of childhood mementos that, once upon a time, had meant something to me. I went through each item slowly. Not to relive the memories. Not to mourn them. But to say goodbye. When I finished, I took the box downstairs to the dumpster behind my building. I didn't hesitate. I tossed it in. And just like that, the last physical connection to them was gone. Walking back upstairs, the night air crisp against my skin, I felt lighter. Not happy exactly, not yet. But relieved. Clean. The next morning, I woke up without that heavy weight in my chest. The kind of weight you don't even realize you're carrying until it's gone. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sun rise over the city. Golden, new, full of possibilities. It hit me then. I had built a life. A real life. Not the one they had predicted for me. Not the failure they had sneered at. My life. My terms. My future. And I had done it all without their help. In spite of them. Maybe someday they'd sit in their crumbling little world, wondering how it all fell apart. Maybe they'd blame bad luck, or sickness, or betrayal. But deep down they'd know. They had done it to themselves. Me? I was too busy living to care. The strange thing was, once I cut them out for good, opportunities started coming faster than I could have imagined. It was like clearing the rot out of my life made room for better things. Real friends, the kind who didn't keep score. A mentor, someone who believed in my ideas and pushed me to dream bigger. Even small kindnesses, strangers recommending me for jobs, clients paying early, a neighbor offering a ride when my car broke down, things that never seemed to happen before. For so long, I thought loyalty meant carrying dead weight until it crushed you. That you had to keep sacrificing for people just because they shared your blood. But the truth was simpler and so much sharper. Family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who shows up when you have nothing to offer but yourself. Family is who roots for you even when they gain nothing from your success. I used to wonder if cutting ties made me a bad person. If refusing to help them now, when they were desperate, meant I was cold or cruel. But standing at the edge of my new life, watching the sun climb higher over the city skyline, I realized something. They made me choose. Them or me. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. No apologies. No guilt. No regret. Not every story ends with forgiveness. Not every wound is meant to heal. Some wounds are meant to teach you where not to bleed again.